Auditor General Tsakani Maluleke is briefing Parliament on the national and provincial audit outcomes. Let's take you live to that.
Since the dawn of our democracy, it was, yes, important to have jumped the hurdle of having the debits and credits right. However, that was never going to be the full story for what is required for public institutions. The debits and credit are one step, an important step, yes, but just one step of a few. The unqualified with findings, that yellow category, relates to auditees, departments and public entities that are able to put together their debits and credits, which, as I say, is an important first step. And if you look at the 42% and the 35%, 42% for unqualified and 35% for clean audits, you're really looking at a PFMA cycle that can deliver a good 77% of auditees that can publish credible financial statements. And that is a good base. However, it is certainly not enough. And I'll explain why I say this. First of all, those in the unqualified zone, far too many of them submit some financial statements of poor quality when we begin our audit. And then they rely on the audit process to correct their misstatements. That's all good and well, but it does highlight a risk that financial management practices are not yet stable. And of course, in a world that's becoming more and more unpredictable and more complex, when there is a crisis or a change in the environment during the course of the financial year, if there isn't a discipline of producing quality financial statements on a regular basis, the ability to change course, to make the type of decisions that those who manage institutions must make on a regular basis, the ability to do so is compromised because you don't have the information you require. The ones in this yellow zone, I want to highlight, the outcome is undesirable because financial statements are fine, but financial management practices are weak. And also, compliance is a problem. And the ability to report faithfully on performance is compromised. So it is absolutely crucial that the ones in the yellow zone be encouraged to move to the clean audit zone. Some of them, far too many of them, are actually too comfortable in that category. I say this because you'll see that there are 82 of them in that yellow block that have been stagnant in this category, been in this category for the last 5 years, meaning that there's a relative comfort to being unqualified with findings. And so they tend to trivialize the need to move towards the green zone. Amongst those 82, there are a good 36 that have one issue standing between them and a clean audit, which then tells us that it is about a posture and a decision that needs to change around a commitment towards clean audits. There are good 26 entities in the higher education and training portfolio, and I say this because I'm sure the Honourable Chair is listening carefully. In that portfolio, there are 26 entities which fail the audit test and are denied a clean audit simply because they don't submit credible financial statements when the audit begins. And so we've got to get them really moving towards the clean zone. It is possible. It's about a change in posture and insisting that these disciplines be in place. The qualified audit opinions are the ones where you've got the purple zone. You'll see that there are 67 audits in the purple zone. Many of those would be departments in the provinces, especially the departments of health, of education. You'll see a few in the social development sphere, as well as a number in public work. Many of the audits in the qualified zone tend to be audits with big budgets in their hands. And they often struggle with accounting for expenditure, which is quite important because one's got to maintain a proper record of how you're spending money. It's not that complex. It's about discipline. Many of them also struggle with reporting on their fixed assets. This is now their property, plant, and equipment. This is important because have not yet built the systems, the processes, the disciplines that help them understand where their assets, what assets they have in their control, what condition those assets are. And quite often, if you don't know those things, it means you're probably not even maintaining them. In our audit tests, we've seen that the discipline of maintaining existing assets and infrastructure are quite weak. And the audit test on financial statements often highlights this risk when we qualify on financial information. So indeed, the stuff that auditors worry about does translate to the lived reality of citizens. When you've got a qualification on property, plant, and equipment, it's important to recognize that that tells you that you're not able to look after the assets that you do have. There are a few audits with adverse opinions and a few with disclaimers of audit opinions. And as the Honourable Chairs know, the disclaimers of audit opinions are those that are the very worst audit outcomes that can be attained. We ought to push back on it. But if you look at where the sixth administration began with 28 disclaimers to now be sitting with only 5 completed, there are a number of audits that are not yet completed, and I'll talk about those in a minute. If we extrapolate where these audits are, we think that the end number for disclaimers will be 13, which means that there have been significant improvements in the number of disclaimers that are sitting in PFMA. On the outstanding audits, I do have a slide that I'll talk to in a moment, but on the whole, I do want to register that the audit outcomes have improved, and indeed, this is a good base that we can build on as we aim to realize our ambition of capable, ethical, and developmental state institutions across South Africa. The next slide, Honourable Chairs, which I won't spend too much time on, highlights the extent of the outstanding audits, and we've denoted there how long their audit outcomes have been outstanding. First of all, on the top left corner are audits that were delayed for one reason or another. We've subsequently completed the majority of those audits, and so those audits have been completed and can now be the subject of oversight engagements in Parliament. What I do want to highlight is the corner on the bottom left as well as the items on the right. There are far too many entities that get away with not submitting their financial statements year after year. Yes, the SAA group has had its own difficulties and been through business rescue, so they're only catching up with the submission of their financial statements now. And then you'll know that the Denel group has had its own difficulties as well. There are a few I want to highlight. The Northwest Transport Investment Group is a group that has not submitted financial statements for the last 5 years. And so that needs the constant attention, the decisive action by those in oversight. We've also got in this group the Post Office and the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, which has been struggling to submit financial statements on time for a number of years now. They've subsequently, in the last few months, submitted the financial statements, and now we are completing their audits. I flag these because when we put that number of outstanding, it's easy to gloss over it, but the fact that audits are outstanding does point to significant weaknesses from an accountability point of view. The ones on the right-hand side of the slide are those where the submission of financial statements tends to be late. And it's fine, once in a while you can have a new entity such as the Border Management Authority submitting financial statements late because they are in transition. That you can understand. But if you have entities, especially such as PMTE, that don't submit financial statements on time, one's got to ask some serious questions about that. I want to draw your attention, Chairs, to the Unemployment Insurance Fund, which has for many years now not submitted financials on time. And so it misses the accountability processes within Parliament. UIF, for the last 5 years, has not submitted financial statements on time, and they have a qualified audit opinion. And if you think about the significance of the amount of money that flows through the fund and the significance of the role they ought to play in our socio-economic framework, it is crucial that oversight be seized with this matter of UIF escaping oversight and accountability. For a full account of all of the audits that are outstanding and those that are delayed and those that don't submit, we do have a section in our report that deals with all of those. I come now to the audit outcomes of the high-impact auditees. We have stripped out the auditees that are significant in terms of the budget that they manage, but also significant in terms of their service delivery imperative. So we highlighted a number of departments and entities, including state entities, that are responsible for the delivery of healthcare services, education, skills development and employment, human settlements, infrastructure, transport, safety and security, water and sanitation, energy, environmental sustainability, as well as financial sustainability. Together, these high-impact auditees account for 77% of the 2 trillion rand expenditure budget. So these are the big ticket items from a service delivery point of view, but also in terms of the budget that they look after. A cursory glance on the 2 bars at the top of the page will show you that indeed, the high-impact auditees lag behind the improvement trend that we've seen. So if we're wanting to drive impact in terms of improved transparency, accountability, performance across government, we've got to worry about these big impact, high-impact auditees. The ones that have got clean audits, and you do have a few, tell us indeed and show us indeed that it is possible, even amongst the more complex and larger departments, to attain clean audits. The majority of the high-impact auditees sit in the unqualified space, and I've already articulated why this space is undesirable. A large number of them, especially the provincial departments of health and education, sit in the qualified space. And the honourable chairs will see that there are a few that are disclaimed or adverse. There are, the one adverse for this year of the high-impact auditees is the Road Accident Fund. And I'd like to also point out the disclaimers of audit opinion being the Compensation Fund as well as CITA. Both of these have got disclaimers of audit opinion, and both of these are important.
All right, that's the Auditor General, Tsakani Maluleke, just briefing Parliament on the audit outcomes for national and provincial departments, saying that there has been an improvement in the audit outcomes for the financial year 2023-2024. However, of course, there are still a lot of problems with a lot of entities not submitting their financial statements timeously, some not submitting their financial statements at all, highlighting that the likes of the National Student Finance Scheme has not submitted their financial statements for a number of years, as well as the Post Office, and talking about how departments like the Department of Health and the Department of Education also not doing so well at a national level.